You're not racist. You're born that way.
Admitted. Candidate for the
The Ontario Institute for Studies in Education and the University of Toronto have two studies they released, and it shows that 6 to 9 month old babies are biased in favor of people of their own race. Babies associate positive sounding music to people of their own race and negative sounding music with people of another race. What about Prince's music? In the second study, researchers say that babies were more likely to follow the gaze of people of their own race than people of another race, quote, suggesting that babies are more willing to learn from people who look like them. That's completely untrue. This is on its face untrue because people, including babies, learn in only one way. That's from everything around them. Everything. Everything that you're exposed to creates a pathway in your brain. It helps create a bias against or for something. If you taste ice cream and like it, you are more likely to eat ice cream. If you have black licorice and like it, then you have cancer. According to one of the study authors, these findings thus point to the possibility that aspects of racial bias later in life may arise from our lack of exposure to other race individuals in infancy. On Friday night, the author Lee joined Fox News Channel host Tucker Carlson on Tucker Carlson Tonight. That's the way they should say it, by the way, to discuss the findings. Are you saying that babies are racist from the beginning?
I'm not saying babies are bigots. I'm just looking at whether or not the babies are already biased to associate certain kind of emotions with own race versus the other race. One of the things that we discovered, however, is that 3-month-olds are not. So they don't associate negative emotions with own race or other race individuals. And however, after about 6 months of life, the babies start to show some biases. So when we show them the music that is happy, they tend to look longer at own race individuals over other race individuals.
Children associate negative emotions with things that they don't know because they haven't been taught to like them yet. And it could potentially be a threat. And that's all you have when you're young. It either feels good or it hurts. So it's either good or bad, one of the two. And when you begin to create pathways in your brain that associate positive feelings towards certain people like mom and dad, who just happen to be the same color you are, then guess what? You're going to gravitate towards things that look like mom and dad. It's that simple. It also depends greatly on how the child is raised. Think about this. I'm wondering if it was part of your study. What about abused children? Children that grew up in a family that hurt them. Mom and dad, same race. But mom and dad beat them. Mom and dad hurt them. Mom and dad neglected them. So they were always constantly suffering and in pain. Never had their diapers changed. Always had a rash. Well, are they going to associate good feelings with mom and dad? Thus, are they going to have a bias towards people that look like mom and dad being of the same color? Probably not. As a matter of fact, they may not trust anybody at that point. This is the fight or flight response. It's one of the very basic parts of our anatomy. It's how we have learned to survive. We go through our life when we find things that could potentially hurt us and try to avoid them. We have certain things built into us, like, I don't know, snakes. People just don't like snakes because they can be poisonous. And we've learned over the course of many, many millennia that snakes can be poisonous and potentially deadly. So a lot of people don't like snakes. It's the fight or flight response. It's natural. And you're not going to change it.
I think the reason for this is actually because most of us who are born into monoracial families, we tend to see only the faces of our own race individuals. And because of this, we really have very limited experience with the other race individuals. So one of the things that when we develop, we tend to show novelty biases, that is, we feel uncomfortable with things that are new, unfamiliar. So because of this, and when they see other race individuals and they are not familiar with, they tend to associate some negative valences with them. So this is the beginning of it.
We must have multicultural families, yes, cities even, and exposures all the time so we can train the racism right out of our culture, right? And by the way, this is a bigger problem than just the family institution. Racism is such a big thing. Family institution has to give way to our thoughts of how to get rid of racism in society.
We are not biologically predisposed to be racially biased. So this is what our findings are suggesting. So it seems to be that basically our early experience, if it's very exclusive, then we tend to develop the early biases. So that's one thing. Another thing is, I think it depends on parents, right, and educators, whether or not you want your kids to develop with biases. For example, you could actually introduce your kids, babies, to read storybooks that are depicting people from all over the world. And I think that would help your child not to see more individuals from different races, ethnicities, as well as expose them to different cultures. I think you make your babies more worldly. So,
friends, this is dangerous. It's dangerous because of people and how they panic. First Amendment is very important in society, but there's certain limitations to it, i.e., don't yell fire in a crowded theater. Why? Why is that such a problem? Well, because people panic. They're going to believe you. They know fire is dangerous, somebody yells fire, and somebody will panic. And as soon as one person starts to panic, and a whole group of people panic, and the next thing you know, you've got a stampede out the front door to try to get away from the smoke and fire. And the problem with information like this is it can cause a panic. What's the response going to be? What's the response from the government going to be? Hey, we've got a great way to retrain society so everybody's better. All we have to do is destroy the family. We'll take over the family to fix your problems. By the way, what government program works so well that you would entrust the development of your child 100% to it? By the way, there's no proof that the ideas that the experts have in restructuring the family are going to have any positive effect. None whatsoever. We have a lot of places in this country, major cities and what have you, where people grow up in a very multicultural society. Do they still have racism? Do they still have bias? Is that racism and bias potentially even stronger? Yes, it is. So it's not going to solve any problems to restructure the family around some sort of notion of anti-racist thought. You, no matter who you are going to develop bias based on learning and interaction. That's what happens. If your experience is good, then you will be less biased. If your experience is bad, then you will be more biased. That is the way of things. Ultimately, bias, though, is irrelevant. And this is important. This is key. Bias is irrelevant. Individuals have a right to a personal bias. Think about it this way. If a child is bitten by a dog and later on in life doesn't particularly like dogs, are we going to say that there's something wrong with that person? No. They learned early that dogs can be dangerous because they were bit by one. Ergo, they have a sense of fear of them later on in life. There's nothing wrong with that. What's important are standards in society. Standards overcome all these biases and things that we feel. A bias is an emotion. It's not a way to make a decision. So we have to have standards in society, concrete rules in society, and we have to concentrate on treating people equally under the law with no thought of race, because race is irrelevant. You do that and you'll build a better society. I promise you.